In these notes, you're going to be learning about congruent triangles. So up here we have a definition. It says two triangles are congruent. Okay, so they're congruent if there is correspondence between the vertices, so that there's correspondence, corresponding angles are congruent, just corresponding sides are congruent. So there is a mouthful statement that you will learn. It is the abbreviation is CPCTC. Okay, so it's corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, so its corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That just means that if everything is congruent, if you know like a couple things are congruent, then everything will be congruent. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and talk about this here. So I'm going to do a lot of highlighting here. I suggest that you do it as well. So I see here that we have this BC is congruent to this ST here. Okay, I notice that there's that one tick mark. So taking a look here, we see the BC, our segment BC is congruent. I'm going to put it's congruent to our, actually, let's see, and it's going from, and if it's going from here, so I'm going to put TS. Okay, next we have here AC. We have AC, okay, is congruent to RT. We see it has the same exact notation here. So I'm going to put RT. Next and finally, we have this AB is going to be corresponding. It's corresponding and congruent to our lovely RS. Okay, so notice how I have the line above. Next, we're going to talk about what angles. So here, take a notice that the angles, and let's get some different colored highlighters here. Okay, so let's get an orange, and let's do a gray, and let's do a lovely light pink. Okay, so we have here angle A, as we see, has two tick marks, and it is congruent to angle R. So angle A and angle R. Then we have here angle C. Angle C is the same exact symbol as angle S. So angle S. Oh, I put that in the wrong spot. So angle C and angle S. And then angle B we have here. Angle B has the same exact tick mark here as angle T. Okay, so that means that A is corresponding to R. If we notice A is congruent to angle R, they are corresponding. B is corresponding to T, and C is corresponding to S. So the big things here, and I can even just put numbers to this if it makes a little bit more sense. But if you have two sides, let's say like these purple lines here that are congruent to each other, you can write this congruent statement. And that's all we're doing is writing the congruent statements, writing what angles are congruent, and normally you're going to be told that whether it's by notation or if it's by giving you a degree. So down here, we're going to go ahead and write up the triangle congruent statement. Now there is a specific order that you write it. So if we knew that angle A, we already said angle A was corresponding to angle R, so that means I'm going to write an R first. And then we have angle B. We already said angle B is corresponding to angle T, so I'm going to go ahead and write the T. Then we know, oh, still in that same color. Okay, so then we know, that's all right, that we have our leftover, so C and S. So C and S would be corresponding. Okay, so I'll highlight this here. All right, so we're going to go ahead based off this congruent statement and do an example. I think after this example, it's going to make a lot more sense. So I'm going to go ahead and draw ourselves two triangles before we get going here. Okay, so two triangles. Okay. All right, and I'm going to make that one gray. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have two triangles. We are given that triangle PMQ is congruent to triangle HJL. We know that PQ is 5. The measure of angle M is 37, and the measure of angle J is 58. So let's go ahead and let's label our triangles. So we have here PQM. And then I know that angle P is corresponding to H, and I know that Q is corresponding to J, and I know M is corresponding to L. Honestly, just look at where they're located in the congruent statement, and that's exactly how it'll be. So P and H, Q and J, M and L. So I'm going to put them in these same exact spots. I'm going to put an H up here, I'm going to put the J, and I'm going to put the L. It's going to make things 10 times easier for you, I promise. Okay, so notice here, I'm going to highlight them just so we can see them a little bit nicer. Okay, and I promise it'll help in the end when we go ahead and find all of the congruencies. So PQ, the length PQ is 15. Notice how there's no angle, so of course it's not talking about the angle. M is 37 degrees, and then J is 58 degrees. Now, we know that they are congruent. So therefore, we know that angle P is congruent to angle H, angle J is congruent to angle Q, angle M is going to be congruent to angle L. So with that piece of information, we definitely know that angle L is going to be 37 degrees. We then can also say that Q is 58 degrees. And then we can get our last angle up here for P and H because we know that the measure of all three angles in the triangle is going to be equal to 180. So we can do the measure of angle P plus 37 plus 58 equals 180. When we subtract that over, the measure of angle P equals 85 degrees. So this will be 85 degrees, 85 degrees. Now, we also know that the sides are going to be corresponding as well. So here we have, and they are also in that same kind of order. So if it helps to just look at the angles, look at the angles. So we see here 85 and 58. That means the included side, this side here, is going to be congruent to this side here. Now also notice here, we have P and Q, P and Q. P and Q is going to be corresponding to H and J. Okay, it's going to be corresponding to H and J. So that means that HJ is also going to be 15. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill these out. So HJ is 15. The measure of angle L is 37 degrees. Q is 58 degrees. And H is 85 degrees. Okay, let's go ahead and let's take a look at these examples together. And then after that, I think it'll make a little bit more sense with all of these congruent statements. Actually, no, you know what? I want to go back to here. I want to reference this up here when I talked about the sides. So I'm going to copy this back down. So we had here triangle PQM is congruent to triangle HJL. Okay, so zooming in here, writing the congruent statements of the sides. So we have here PQ is going to be congruent to HJ. So segment PQ is congruent to segment HJ. Now I want you to see, okay, now QM and JL. So literally based on how these are written, that is how you get your congruent statements. So then we'll also have QM is going to be congruent to JL. And then next we have, and I actually want to make that purple, just like this last one. Okay, and then lastly, you take the two outside letters, and I write it in the same order that I've been writing it in, so left to right. So PM is going to be congruent to HL. So PM is congruent to HL, the segments. Okay, so these are the congruent statements for. So now let's move on to these next ones. Okay, so it says here, let's go ahead and look at this here. So is our triangle RST congruent to this triangle here? So now, how we need to figure that out is we need to go ahead and see what N is, right? So let's go ahead and let's look here. And I'm actually going to change these back to the colors that I had them before. Get ourselves a purple. Okay, so we have here R is going to be corresponding to X, S is going to be corresponding to Y, and T is going to be corresponding to Z. So let's go ahead and mark that. So T and Z, then we have S and y. And notice how I'm highlighting. It's going to make things visually 100 times easier to find what is corresponding to what. And then r and x. So that means r and x are going to be congruent. So this is going to be 40 degrees. Okay, z and t are the same. So this would be 90 degrees. Okay, so then here we have S and Y. Well, S and Y are congruent, so Y should be 50 degrees, but we need to find the value of N. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, since I know Y is 50, I'm going to do 2N plus 10 equals 50. We'll then go ahead and solve. So we'll get 2N equals 40, and then N equals 20. Okay. Next example, so it says here that we have two triangles are congruent to each other. Okay, we need to find the measure of angle X. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. The quick way to do it is do exactly what I did in the beginning. P is going to be corresponding to Y, which means those are congruent. R is congruent to X, and Q is going to be congruent to Z. So if we know P is 63 degrees, right? P is 63 degrees, then so is Y is 63 degrees. If we know Q is 57 degrees, Q is 57, then we know Z is 57 degrees. And then it's asking for the measure of angle X, so this guy here. So that's when we know we can do the measure of angle Y plus the measure of angle X plus the measure of angle Z equals 180. Plug those bad boys in, so we're going to get 63 plus the measure of angle X plus the measure of angle Z. Z actually we know is 57. Equals 180. When we go ahead and subtract, the measure of angle X equals 60 degrees. Okay. When in doubt, you can also draw a triangle. Okay. So you're more than welcome to draw a triangle, and this is what it would look like. All right. There's what it would look like. Okay, moving on to the next one. This is saying what is the value of X. So again here, now I'm going to look at not just the angles, but the sides, right? So we have here, and I'm going to do it this way. So we know, not that way. Let's not get that. Okay, so we know DE is going to be corresponding to HE. So DE and HE. Oh, well, that's already helping us 100 times more than what we would have thought. So EF is corresponding to EG. So EF and EG. And then lastly, we have here DF and HG. So DF and HG. Okay, and all this was asking was for X, and so since we know that segment DE is congruent to segment EH, actually HE, we can go ahead and do 10 equals 5x, divide by 5, and then we get x equals 2. All right, there you have it. Let me know if you have questions. Bye.